Welcome back. My name is Cassandra, and if you are new here, please remember to hit that subscribe button because on this channel, I try to share new inspiration and DIYs on a budget. So today we're going to make two little gnome sandals. Okay, so to start this off, I will make sure that I provide a link so that you guys actually have a pattern to use because it might be a little important for this one than us just freehanding it. But to start, I did trace my pattern and then I, of course, cut it out. And then I just want to make sure that it's even with the other shoe that I had already previously cut. Now here, what I'd like to do is I just like to actually rip off the paper off the foam board. I just find that it's much easier to work with. I don't know why I do it. I just like it. So that's totally optional. You do not have to do it. It just works for me. So then I go in there with a sanding block and I just lightly go in on the edges and around the sides. It just smooths it out a little bit better than what scissors would do. So if you have any kind of jagged edges or anything, take a sanding block to it. It'll be perfectly smooth. And it also helps create the shape. So again, I just want to keep measuring it and make sure that we're still good. Now, one thing I wanted to do is I wanted to make sure that I have two separate soles. So when I go to cut these out, I wanted to make sure that they were opposite of each other so that they don't look like they have two left feet. I also wanted to do something different than my typical boots because I know that we're going into spring here soon, change of holidays, change of season. So I just thought it'd be super cute. Now, once my sole is cut out, I'll go back in and I'll use that to trace my next step. And for this, we're going to just use some faux leather. Now, you do not have to use this. You can use regular material or you can also use the foam. I can't think of what it's called, but it's something that you'll see me use actually for the bottom of the sole. And it actually has like a sticky film to it. So once I've got that traced out and cut, I'll just make sure that everything's lined up and perfect. And then I'll just add glue and add that to the top of my sole because we're going to start building from here. Now, the next step is, of course, I'm using a paper towel roll or toilet paper roll, whichever one you have on hand. And I'm just going to cut it into a strip. I want to make sure that both of my shoes has the exact same width so that they do not look uneven. So I want to make sure they're identically cut out. Now I cut this about an inch wide. You don't want it too big, but it's up to you how big you want your actual sandal part to be. And then of course I'm just going to use some masking tape because I always do when I'm building shoes. So I think that's like a must supply that I always keep on hand. So I'm just going over that on both sides and I want to make sure that it's nice and sturdy so then when I start applying everything else to it, I have a good base. So now we're just going to make sure we kind of get it shaped back and then we're going to start forming it around the actual sole. Now on each side of the sole, you'll see I actually pinched it. So I took part of the edge of the toilet paper roll and then I just started bending it back and forth because I wanted to make sure that it did not lose its shape. So then once we've got that down, I want you to see here, I kind of just folded slightly on both sides and created a line and made it really, really strong so that you can actually see because it needs to be folded on both sides. So now I'm just going to lay both of my strips that go on top and I'm going to go back in with this faux leather and I think it's faux leather. I got it from Hobby Lobby and I had had it a while actually when I first got my Cricut because I wanted to make little earrings out of it. But hey, I found some other uses for it. So anyways, I go back in and I trace out both of those. That way I have, the exact, again, it needs to be exactly for both shoes so that you have the correct dimensions. And I will have all of this in the link below. Nice little pattern so that you can see what goes where. Now I'm just going to glue both of those together once I make sure that everything is smooth. So once I glue them, you'll go back in and you'll actually make sure that your sides, see where that is folded? Make sure you have those lines still in there because you don't want to lose those lines. Those lines are something that you're going to need on both sides so that you can put it in between the sole of your shoe and then the foam that you have that you started to build on your shoe. I went ahead off camera and I started to build that one just so that you could have a good visual as to what I'm speaking about when I start kind of explaining the next steps. So you don't want to, I guess, glue the ends down where it was folded, and I learned that the hard way. So I'm taking those back up. So, hey, you live and you learn, and you won't know how to create anything unless you make mistakes, right? So that's what I'm here for. Let me make your mistakes and see where we go from there. Okay, so now it's time to go ahead and that flap that we had folded over, I want you to put it in between the faux leather and then the foam board. So put it right in the middle and you're going to want to hold it there. I definitely would hold it there. I wouldn't start bending anything over until you know that it is dry because you don't want it to come back up. So then, as you see here, I misjudge and I had too much, which is fine. You don't want to cut too less. You always want to cut over and not too less. So I'm going to do the exact same thing. Make sure my little flap is over and I'm going to stick it with glue right in between there again. And then I want to hold it. Just hold it there and, well, once I glue it, you're going to want to hold it there and make sure that it's completely dry before we let go of it. Don't those look like so realistic? I mean, to me, they do. I know that my daughters own a pair of little sandals, and that's kind of where I got my idea from. They love them. But, we could stop here or we can go on to adding fur as well. So before we add the fur, I want to go ahead and add, this is craft foam. That's the name of it. For the life of me, I could not remember what it was called, but it's crafting foam. So I just used the white one, and I actually got this in a pack from Walmart a while back, and I just used the bottom of my sole, and then I traced that out because I want to make sure that if I've kind of made it a little bit bigger than my pattern or whatever, I want to make sure that it is a good cutout and it's going to cover the full bottom. Okay, now with this craft foam, it actually has a sticky back on it, so you can just go ahead and peel back the paper and it already has a sticky adhesive. Now, if you want to make sure that it definitely stays secure, you would go ahead and add some type of glue, whether it be a hot glue gun, which I do mostly, or any other type of glue that you have on hand. I just wanted to make sure that the bottom sticks and I want to make sure that I'm lining it up perfectly. Now we can leave this as is, or we can go all out and do what I did and add a little bit of fur. Now I got this down in the yarn aisle. It's like I can't think of the name of it, but you'll see it. They have them out. I got this one at Walmart and I did not pay that much for it. Um, but they're super cute and it looks like just little fur. So I have to add fur. I know that winter and my fur boots are probably over for until next year, but or the end of the year, fall, but I had to add fur at least going into the next season. I love fur. So, like I said, you don't have to add this step. I just wanted to add a little bit something to it to kind of make it a little bit extra. So I just cut the strips and I'm going to actually cut two strips and kind of leave that gap in between so you can still see that beautiful faux leather in between it. Now you can design this however you would like. You don't have to add the fur, like I said. You could add other different things to it. You could add little beads or however you want. They're just a cute little sandal, and I can't wait to make a gnome that is going to go with it. And that's one thing I would say about me. I base a lot of the way that I make my gnomes off of what type of shoes that I come up with. I don't know why I do that. I know it's probably backwards, but I love to create the little shoes and then figure out what type of gnome I would like to make to go with it. Okay, so now we are on last but not least step. This is going to be just the strip that's going to go around. Now, I can't give you a judgment as to I guess, tell you a measurement as to how wide or how big you need to make this. But as you see, I kind of just stuck my shoe there and I based it off of the side. I want this to go all around the side, but I don't want it to come up over or up under the sole. So I just wanted to hide any imperfections or anything that's sticking out on the side. I wanted to make sure that it is completely covered so it looks like one solid piece. Okay, so once I've completed the fur on my next or on my last shoe, I'm going to go ahead and we're going to start just adding this little strip around the edges. I just think that it kind of ties everything in together. Now as you see, I'm actually cutting down some of the fur on the edges, and it's just on the edge because I wanted to make sure that this has a seamless, flawless edge to where it's not bumpy and it's not, pushing it out any but it kind of just goes in very seamlessly. Okay, we're going to do the exact same thing for sandal number 2. We're just going to trace out our little pattern. And on this one, I'm actually just going to show you kind of the pattern and how I traced it out and cut it out. I don't really know if you want to see all that, but I went ahead and just including it into the video. Okay, so once I have all of that sole ready to go, I went ahead and I did not get to film this part, but I did add a black piece of craft foam to the bottom. So I just used my sole, traced it out, and I put it on the bottom for this one. Now I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing again, except I'm using a gray. With this gray craft foam, I'm going to actually use this on the top of my sole. And I'm just doing the same thing. I am just cutting it out, tracing it, and then cutting it. What you see me doing here when I keep flipping it over is because, kind of like I mentioned in the beginning, I didn't want to have two left feet. So what I was doing was I was just making sure when I traced it out that it went perfectly with the pattern. And one thing I also did is I did not mark on the actual craft foam. I marked on the back of the foam because I wanted to make sure when I actually put the foam on or stuck it on that you didn't see any of the black lines from my Sharpie pen. So that's just kind of a little tip, just something that I do. Okay, so the top pattern of this little sandal is a little bit different, and you'll see I have everything for you to download the pattern. So I'm just going to lay that on there and trace it and then cut this out as well. This is actually going to be the top part of my sandal instead of just a line straight across. And we're just using the craft foam. You can use pretty much whatever you want. I suggest that if you are going to do something other than craft foam, make sure it's a thicker, like it's a thick material, something that you can actually bend and work with and will actually hold form on its own. So if you wanted to go with the paper towel roll, just make sure it's not too thick and it's something that when you cut it out, it actually will still hold its form and kind of set up like the top of a sandal or a top of a house shoe instead of kind of flopping down, which you'll see as I start building it. Now, I kind of went a little too fast. I shouldn't have already put my foam on both the top and bottom sole on, but hey, like I said, I'll make the mistakes for you and we'll go from there. So I'm just going to take the back off of my little piece that goes across the top, and you'll see why I have this cut out like this. I think it's better for me to show you than to try to explain it to you. Now we have it in place. So now you want to go in there with the hot glue, and just please do not burn your fingers because this is kind of really tedious a little bit. I don't want you to burn the top of your fingers. I'd feel so bad. So wear something, some kind of guards on your fingers because you may get glue on the tops of your fingers and it's going to burn. Okay, so doesn't that look already like a little slipper or like a little house shoe? That's what we're going for. So just make sure your bottom and everything is secured with the hot glue before you move on to the next steps. And if you need to change anything, now's a good time. Like if you need to adjust it or, just anything you need to do, go ahead and do it now before we move on. Um, you'll see I just wanted to keep making sure I formed it and made sure that all the flaps were down and everything was glued. And here we go again. I'm adding fur. Of course I am. So I found the exact same kind of fur that I had got from the first one in the yarn section at Walmart. And this one is white. So I'm just going to keep putting that across the top and you'll see where we go. You know me, I have to have fur in something. Somehow, some way, we have to have fur. Now, with what I'm doing here, I'm not leaving any lines. So I'm just taking the glue gun. First, I'm taking the fur that I had already glued down, and I'm kind of pushing it forward or pushing it up so that I have, a good line. And then I'm creating another line. And I'm just going to keep doing this until the whole top is completely covered. I didn't leave any gaps on this project. Okay, now everything is on there. So I'm just going to go back in with my scissors, and around the bottom, I'm just going to trim off some of that faux fur just to make sure that not a lot of it is hanging off the sides. So after I was done with that part, I decided to go in with the faux leather, and I just took the sole of my shoe and I traced it and I put it on the top because I just felt like it was too plain. So I had to add something in there. So here's another little printout that will be included when you do get my little cutouts or printouts. I just took a little strip that I had measured, and for this shoe, I just wanted to make sure that again, I had something going around the sole of the shoe just to make sure that you do not see the layers, just kind of make it a little more seamless. So that's all I'm doing here is I'm just tracing it out and then I'll cut it out. And I'm using the craft foam for this in the color black. Basically, I'm just making sure again that it lines up and it fits perfectly around. Now you may have a little bit more than what you need, and if so, just snip it off and make sure it's seamless. I just thought it kind of just something it needed to kind of cover all the different layers that I had added. Now, you can leave it as is. It is pretty cute as is, but I just had to kind of do something extra. So, after getting my cutting mat, I grabbed my faux leather and I'm going to go ahead and again cut another little strip and we're going to attach it to the back of the shoe, kind of like a sandal, to where you kind of have just the back of the shoe. Now, again, you do not have to do this. I just wanted to see what it would look like, and I ended up liking it. As a tip, that little piece that I added for you so that you could add on the sole of the shoe, you can actually use that as a guide when cutting this. So once I had it cut out, all I did was I took my little sandal and right where the fur begins, I actually just added a little dot of glue on both sides. So on one side and then again on the other side, I did not attach anything to the back. Okay, so there is our little sandal number two. Well, I really enjoyed making these. I have so many more to come. I hope that you love them. Please hit that like button and subscribe. Until next time, y'all. Happy crafting.